Doing something a little different today. The San Antonio police trial is interesting, but hasn't been getting very much interaction with folks. So I thought maybe I would pull off of that for a while and do this rather interesting trial out of Virginia. And that involves a gal by the name of Abby Zwermer and her shooting. And it's not a criminal trial, it's a civil trial. Here's what we're talking about today. On January 26, 2023, Abby Zwerner was teaching in her first grade classroom in Rich Neck Elementary School in Virginia. As she was teaching, she became aware that one of her students who had apparent behavior problems, a first grader with really bad behavior problems, that he might have a firearm in his backpack. So she took the steps necessary to alert administrators, and several of her colleagues did the same thing, alerting the administrator. And the administrator basically said, well, have his mom come pick him up, which, for the idea that he has a firearm in his bag, is not an appropriate response. And so this is the opening statement of the plaintiff, and I think it gives a pretty good nutshell recitation of why they are going after this particular doctor. Her name is Ebony Parker. She was the assistant principal who was on duty that day and who had the obligation to seize the firearm after having been told that it existed, and she didn't do that.
And may it please the court, Your Honor. Good morning, members of the jury. In every school, there are spoken and unspoken promises that teachers trust administrators to keep. One of those promises is that when teachers sound an alarm that something is wrong, administrators will answer. In this case, on January 6, 2023, those promises were broken. And those promises were not broken by chance or confusion, but through a series of deliberate decisions that were made inside Rich Neck Elementary School, a school right down the street from us, 15 miles in our own community. And you're going to hear about the defendant, Dr. Ebony Parker. She was the assistant principal on January 6, 2023 at Rich Neck Elementary School. Now, members of the jury, an assistant principal is the second in command. She's a frontline administrator. And as a frontline administrator, the assistant principal directly interfaces with the teachers every day. Those teachers go to her for support. They go to her when there's problems in the classroom. And those teachers go to her when there are safety concerns. And you don't have to trust me on that. You're going to see during this trial copies of the school handbook, the crisis management plan, which governs these responsibilities. And it also governs the relationship between administrators and teachers. As an assistant principal, you have the authority to search a student, to remove a student from the classroom, to notify the principal, contact law enforcement. One of the main issues of a frontline administrator is safety. We've all heard safety first. Members of the jury, this is the job of an assistant principal, the job that Dr. Parker accepted with those spoken and unspoken promises, with that authority that she undertook as the assistant principal. Now let's talk about January 6, 2023, the first week back to school after the holiday. Kids are excited, there's excitement in the air. It's a Friday. There's about 100 kids that are filing in to Rich Neck Elementary School at about 9 o'clock that morning. 20 of whom are headed down to room 11. Room 11 is the classroom that Ms. Zwerner was the first grade teacher of. Now it's January, cold out. These kids have on hoodies, jackets, and backpacks. And in those backpacks are things that you would expect to find. Books, pencils, calculators. About an hour and a half later, at 10:30 a.m., another student, a 6-year-old, who we're going to refer to as JT, comes to school. His mom drops him off. You may be wondering why JT got to school at 10:30 that day. You'll probably hear that he was on a modified schedule because JT had some behavior problems. He was also coming back to school that day from a suspension where 2 days prior, JT had a violent episode where he took Miss Zwermer's phone and slammed it, cracking the screen protector. So this is his first day back from the suspension as well. JT, too, has on his backpack. He checks into the office. In JT's backpack are the usual things: books, a calculator, pencils. But you're going to hear that JT also had a loaded gun. So JT goes down to room 11, which is right down the hall from the main office, where the assistant principal's office is, where Dr. Parker spent the majority of her day sitting at her desk. You're also going to hear that it was makeup testing day. Opposing counsel may say that's an important day in the life of an administrator. And it is. They're doing makeup testing. About 30 students that day from grades 3 through 5 who are making up the testing. A very small percent. Now it's about 11:30, 11:40, about an hour's gone by. Miss Zwermer goes into Dr. Parker's office. She's sitting at her desk. And Miss Zwermer says to Dr. Parker, JT seems off today and in a violent mood. He just threatened to beat up a kindergartner in the cafeteria. Does Dr. Parker get up from her desk and go down and check on JT? No. Does Dr. Parker look up and address Miss Zwermer and her concerns? No. Dr. Parker does not even look up. So now some more time's gone by. It's a little after 12. You're going to hear that another teacher comes into Dr. Parker's office, Amy Kovac. Ms. Kovac comes into the office with an alarming report and says after she's been in JT's class, spoken to some of the students in JT's class, Ms. Kovac thinks that JT may have a gun in his backpack. So, does Dr. Parker remove the child from the class? No. Does she notify the next in the chain of command, the principal? No. Does she contact law enforcement? No. Does she search the backpack herself? No. Ms. Kovac says she's going to go search the backpack when they go to recess. Now about maybe 20 more minutes or so go by. Ms. Kovac comes back to Dr. Parker's office, where Dr. Parker is still sitting at her desk. And now Ms. Kovac says to Dr. Parker, I checked the backpack. There was no gun. Right? However, in her next breath, Ms. Kovac says, Ms. Zwermer thinks that the child, JT, took something out of his backpack, the gun, and put it in his pocket. Does Dr. Parker then decide to remove the child from recess while he's out there with all the other students? No. Does Dr. Parker search the child? No. She doesn't notify the principal. Instead, Dr. Parker downplays the report. And she says to Ms. Kovac, he has little pockets. So Ms. Kovac leaves. Well, Ms. Kovac's one of the proctors that day for the makeup testing. So she goes out to recess and comes back to see Dr. Parker one more time. This is Ms. Kovac's third time in the office. Says, I wanted to let you know he has on a jacket. I'm going for the testing because it starts at 1. And she'll be back for the testing. Now some more time goes by. It's about 1:40. 2 additional staff members go to Dr. Parker. One goes into Dr. Parker's office and says, he just got off the phone with another first grade teacher. He wants to know, did you search JT? Dr. Parker says, yes. The backpack's been searched. He walks out. Shortly behind him comes in the guidance counselor. And he says to Dr. Parker, after speaking to others and being concerned that a student actually saw bullets or a gun in JT's pocket, says, can I search JT? So not only does Dr. Parker not leave her office and go down the hallway and take JT out of that classroom, not only does she not search him, she doesn't call the police, but she makes the decision to say to the guidance counselor, no, you cannot search the boy. She says, just wait. His mother will be here soon. Let her know. The mother gets there about 2:30. This is about 1:40 p.m. We've had a day now of warnings. 4 warnings. So now the time is 1:58. Yay! Everybody nearby hears the sound of a gunshot. JT has now taken that firearm, pointed it at Abby, and pulled the trigger. You're going to hear that bullet went into her hand, her left hand, through her hand, into the side of her left chest, where it still lies today, because it's too dangerous to remove. You're going to hear how January 6, 2023 changed Abby's life forever. She has undergone 6 surgeries and still has one coming up to remove a plate out of her hand. You'll be able to see her hand, the difference. She still does not have full range of motion in her left hand. And you're going to hear from those doctors, and they're going to tell you about that impact from that gunshot.
And here is a short summary of what the defense is offering in terms of what they believe happened, as well as who they think may be responsible and whether or not this lady should be held accountable.
No one could see this coming. No one could predict that. Hindsight is 2020. These are not my words. In the course of this trial, the evidence will show that these are the words of the staff and teachers who will hear from these kids. These are the people who were present and were affected by the shooting that occurred, the tragic shooting that occurred in Bridge Neck Elementary School in January of 2023. These are the words of Dr. Ebony Parker's accusers. Their accusers. These are the people who were her coworkers, they were her colleagues, the people that relied on each other to make decisions. They were people who understood that a public school setting is a community and decision making is cooperative. Although there is hierarchy, decision making is collaborative. Those at the top, the so-called administration, depend on reliable subordinates, but they are equals. They are equals in the sense that everyone must exercise independent judgment and discretion. They need to use their minds. The world is a complicated place. There are no easy solutions. There are no simple stories. The law recognizes this. The law recognizes that there is such a thing as hindsight bias. Fine. Hindsight. Everyone's heard the phrase hindsight is 2020. We've heard different variations of this. There's Monday morning quarterbacking. This is something that is embedded in the fabric of our life. It is common sense.
Now, what he's arguing here is foreseeability, that essentially nobody could have known, nobody could have foreseen, nobody knew what was going to happen, and this has all been put together with hindsight. Well, foreseeability is a good defense in the right situation. If you never know about something and something bad happens, you can't be charged with knowledge of that event. You can't be held liable for negligence. So let's suppose that unknown to you, there is a sinkhole in your backyard, and you put up a trampoline, and your kids are playing on the trampoline one day, and all of a sudden that sinkhole opens up, and your kids are able to scramble to safety, but the one kid from the neighborhood is on there and he gets sucked down and unfortunately he drowns. And you get sued. Well, unless you're in a sinkhole district or unless you had knowledge that you were sitting over this underground cavern, again, that a sinkhole opening up in your backyard is not foreseeable. So that's essentially what he's arguing. It's, I didn't know the meteor was going to hit here. That's kind of what he's saying. But the interesting thing about foreseeability is not that it's measured weeks or months before the event. In other words, when the kid enrolled for school, was it reasonably foreseeable that he was going to pack a gun in and shoot the teacher? No, probably not. But once that vice principal knew that he was on the school grounds with a firearm and that several people had seen it, that it was likely going to be used for something, that person, this doctor, Dr. Ebony Howard, I think it is, that doctor certainly had an obligation to do something. And that something would have included calling for a school resource officer, calling the police, going down there with security and searching the kid and the kid's bag. None of that happened. Her response was pretty much, call his mom. And that's not an appropriate response when you're dealing with an instrument that can kill someone. An interesting point of this, because I know somebody is going to ask, the young woman whose child this is was arrested and sentenced to prison in federal court for not securing that handgun and letting her child get it and use it, which again is an appropriate response when someone of that tender age grabs a firearm away from mommy or daddy. Absolutely, they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Now, this is how he summed up his argument at the end. Essentially, don't judge on the basis of your emotions, judge these cold, hard facts, and then this.
This is a court of law to assess witness credibility. This will be decided in the crucible of court. You will look at them. You will decide. You are deciding people's lives, careers. That is what it's going to say. It is not a diamond. Apply the law. Trust your instincts.
This is going to be an interesting case to follow. I'm going to have more video tomorrow on this. I got into this late today because I was busy with a number of other things, but tomorrow I'm going to devote pretty much the entire day to getting this particular trial worked up and some of these really interesting pieces of testimony sent out. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here today. If you have the opportunity today, try to do one kind thing to help somebody else. Any kind thing will do. Buy somebody a Coke, get them a cup of coffee. Anything that makes their day better, that would be a way to help make the world a better place. Because after all, isn't that what we're all after? Now, YouTube has a few things that they think you might be interested in, and they're going to be showing you that right up there.